Hello, hello, hello. It's TeMeka of Love Inspired Teach E. Welcome to the Tuesday Firestarters podcast. Just here to share with you different interesting topics. In case you haven't caught us before, definitely want to thank you for being here. Sometimes there's guests, sometimes it's just me sharing what I've learned, especially, you know, since there's just been a lot of different changes that everyone's adjusting to over the past, this podcast started during the pandemic. So just as we continue to navigate what's going on in the world these days. And so definitely in coming on here today, I think the last podcast was a rerun on finances, but wanted to make sure that we touched back on relationships just because, the trending topic of the past week has been about the Titanic, people that were going and trying to see what was going on, and it was a billionaire, and it's four people in like this very tiny vessel. But I guess the mom for the husband, the billionaire husband, and 19-year-old son that went down and had to have passed away, finally spoke out. And it's very interesting to just hear, like, as far as relationships go, on one hand, you have an aunt saying that the son was terrified and didn't want to go, and she was closer to her nephew than she was to, the mom and dad. And then on the other hand, you have a mom saying, she gave up her spot for her son because this was something he really wanted to do. And when you really think about it, you can have different types of relationships with different people, whether it's in your family, whether, it's your significant other, and your best friend. Like, the way you interact with each one of those people is going to vary. And it's really important to check in, and also factor in that what is expressed to one person may be totally different than what's expressed to another person. And what's really happening right now is that people are making a lot of assumptions related to whether or not it was the right choice, whether or not who had the right information. But the reality is, what if they were both right? Like, what if the son was both excited but also scared? Like, the possibility of that being the case is entirely feasible, right? Uh, you can feel one emotion one moment, another emotion the next moment. So when we talk about, different relationships and how they relate to one another, they're not always going to be the same. And I think what people have a hard time processing is that is actually okay. What happened with them was unfortunate, but at the same time, we can only speculate on what's happened. And for us here that are processing it, like, we're in real time, we're living in the moment. So when we do touch on health, we do talk about, being mindful, being present. How do you, cope with different things? And when I tie it back to these relationships that we're discussing today, we've got to use this as an opportunity to really evaluate who we have in our lives. Who do we feel comfortable sharing with? Is there anyone, like, yes, you may express your emotions in full to one person. You may even, say, hey, I felt this way before, but I feel this way now, and kind of give that clarification. But it really touches on how we communicate with one another. So to, take this a step further, and really, how do we get better about communicating with one another? I was watching something the other day. I think it was like a comedian, or maybe like a commencement speech or something like that, where the speaker was just saying it's as simple as pick up the phone, call your mom, call, your best friend. We rely a lot more on texting. Chat GPT is the new thing that's going on right now. I've seen, like, little articles about it, but I myself don't know a lot about it. So it's one of those things I've kind of had to look into a little bit. But um, really having those face-to-face conversations is great if it's readily available, but instead of texting because it's easier, picking up the phone. I'll be honest, what I've found is that even for me, like there are certain people where I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is the right time to call. Do people even check voicemails anymore? Like that's the other question I always find myself asking. Like if I leave a voicemail, are they even going to check it? Do they have the visual voicemail, which is something I use, just the way I have my voicemail feature set up. Uh, and so if I find that, okay, I'm not sure about the timing of the phone call, it's going to go to voicemail, then I'll go ahead and leave a text message like saying, hey, I didn't want to let this opportunity pass me by and me not let you know I was thinking about you and wanted to touch base with you because time is passing quickly. I can easily tell you, I'm looking at the calendar and thinking it's the end of June. When was my actual last live podcast? I'm not 100% sure myself. I've definitely wanted to make sure there's consistencies. I have no problem running a rerun here and there. And there's just been a lot of adjustments going on lately. So again, when it comes to relationships, communication, to tie it all together, you've got to use those methods that work best for you. And sometimes, maybe you're not gonna get into be able to get into a real conversation. Hey, if writing is your thing and that's what works better for you, go ahead and do that. When we think about things we used to do and whether or not they're still relevant today, how often do people pick up a pen and paper, jot a little note, send it off? It doesn't happen that often. I'm sure there's plenty of people, I know for myself, checking my mail, I absolutely know it's more than likely going to be primarily bills and advertisements. And most of those are going in the trash. So, yeah, just something to bear in mind. And then, so you can, like I said, I definitely encourage using the phone to communicate, writing if that's better. But also when it comes to communication, I think you have to be intentional and conscious about it as well. And I kind of mentioned it, but let me go ahead and point out that, like even the people you live with, sometimes you need to make a conscious effort to check in with them. It's easy to let life and all the different things you have going on kind of run you ragged and have you keep pushing things off. And yeah, I completely believe that proximity sometimes is helpful. Like with my own children, I'll even say, just us hanging out and chilling, it's nice. But I also have to make that conscious effort to, ask them open-ended questions, what interesting thing happened to you today or what was really challenging for you today? Not just how was your day, since that's kind of, I think people take that question for granted and there's just like a lot of room for people to just kind of pass that off because it's a common question. But just coming up with ways to engage fully and consciously is really important as well. So just when it comes to your relationships, your communication is always going to be key and really, really important. And then the other thing I think is important to check in on when it comes to, like I said, these relationships where they're stratified. If you are making the time to communicate more effectively based on what method you're using, or if you are I apologize, this is a reminder for something new. If you're going to have to fall back on writing something in paper, but scheduling that time to check in. The other thing you may want to also consider is just planning an activity. And I say that because, like I was saying to my girlfriends, remember when, we used to try to do a once a month thing and then we all ended up you know, some of us have kids, some of us don't, but just life has gotten in the way and that got hard. So then it got pushed to like quarterly. And now we're not so intentional with the frequency of it, but we do make it happen. And, we've talked about getting back into that conscious effort. But when you think about couples nowadays who they have a consistent date night, like some people consistently have to put it on the calendar every week, Wednesday's date night or whatever. I remember there was a relationship I was in, one of my exes. We had a standing date night on Tuesdays. And I think we planned that. It's funny because it was before I even had kids. It was either, I'm fairly certain it was Tuesdays because it was highly unlikely to be Thursdays, but it's because one of the places we would go to often had like a weekly bowling special. And he knew that was like my favorite thing to do, which it still is, honestly. I like feel like people can easily get away with checking in with me by making that suggestion. It's not as easy as it used to be, but it still works well. So what is it? What is an activity? I think all my friends still, it's like anything wine related. If it's like a wine tasting or just, you know, I we've never been like very much bar people, but there's still that opportunity for activities. And I'll also say, honestly, like with a lot of discussion about mental health and whatnot and checking in with people, it was happening more frequently. And I think we've gotten away from it a little bit. But also, when you think about planning an activity, it is your opportunity to really engage with someone, check in, and see, like, hey, is my friend like less social? Is it because of everything they have going on in their life, or is there something underlying going on there? I have a girlfriend who's really good about checking in, and that reminds me, like, I'm literally, because I know myself and I will forget, I do want to like give her an update. And even though I'm podcasting with y'all right now, I am going to go ahead and hit her up with a message because I want her to know, just to let her know. Hmm. That her little words of encouragement the other day were helpful, and that I have an update for her. All right, so thank you for bearing with me and allowing me to do that. Um, but yeah, planning those activities, making sure that you're getting those check-ins. Just because I'm trying to make sure this lighting's right because it was really bright when I started. You never really know what's going on with someone, and if you know them well enough, that can be an easy way to like get a sense of what's really going on. So yeah, as far as today and what we really wanted to get into, it was definitely touching in on those relationships, things to think about when it comes to building your relationships, deepening those relationships that you have, and just creating more awareness around it. Because the other thing is, you never know how long someone's going to be around. My grandmother recently celebrated her 89th birthday, and it's crazy to me because I'm like, whoa, she's getting into her 90s. What if she makes it to 100? But we just don't know what's next. And, even myself, when I think about how far technology has come, what happened? There's people who always have those references about, I remember when, um, you know, internet was dial up, all those different things. I'm of that age where those types of things are significant. Like my kids have never not known there to be, you know, internet, and they kind of like they understand Wi-Fi, they understand getting a hotspot and all that stuff. I mean, I wasn't even thinking about any of those things. Those at one of their ages, it wasn't even an option for something to consider and think about. So, um, you have to really hone in on, as time progresses, as things change, how do we make sure our relationships are not lacking in their quality? I even saw a post recently too. It was something related to like, why is marriage not common, or why do so many marriages fail? Now that's been going on for a long time, so maybe we should save that for a different day and more relationship, more of a like love topic type of thing. But just as far as the way people relate to one another, I don't hear as much about people like going to reunions. I think we all rely a lot more on social media to stay connected to one another. And what's and maybe it's unusual for me. I'm definitely one of those people where I am a terrible person about checking Messenger. Like there was one brief period where I was, especially when I was doing more related to the blog and building the marketing side of the company, the coaching side of the company, where I couldn't ignore the inbox. But that is my least favorite way to communicate with people, is that Facebook inbox. The DMs have never been a good place to get a hold of me. I don't know if that's me being resistant to something or what it is, and I've definitely had some bad experiences there. But I hone in on, I thrive when the relationships are more in person and just genuine. Like I can sense that genuine feel to it. So don't let yourself lose that. Don't lose that connection. We've got to make sure that we're doing our part to make sure that we have genuine connection with one another. So the podcast format has definitely changed, but I don't want to forget to remind you guys to like, share, subscribe. Feel free to leave comments, ring the notification bell so that you know when there's going to be more episodes. I definitely was thinking like, wanting to incorporate more guests, but just logistically, there's been some changes. So if there's things that you like, things that interest you, definitely let me know, because I want to make sure that the Love, Inspire, Teach, E, which is what LITE stands for, that the Firestarters element keeps engaging you guys, keeps giving you content that's worthwhile, that you want to see, and it's not just, the videos back on replay. So, and it's funny because we never did get back to revisiting the original podcast on relationships. I think there's some good updates to be had with some of the guests that were on there. Even myself, like there's certain things, updates I can share that I think are relevant. But yeah, so that's where we're going to leave it at for today. Definitely make it a shorter one. But I hope to see you guys next Tuesday is actually 4th of July. So here in the US, that's a holiday. We're going to take off again. But the following Tuesday after that, we'll pick back up, get into one of those topics, whether it's finances, health, or we can even go back to relationships if I get some feedback. And occasionally we'll do spirituality. I'm far less likely to touch on that one. Not because I'm not a believer, I just think it's different for everybody. And it's not a topic I study, but I definitely think it's worthwhile. It's definitely one of those things that, making sure that we check in, touch base with people, it's important, because the Firestarters podcast definitely want to have engaging topics, but when it really comes down to it, when people are really looking for a community or a place where they can have these conversations, and because life gets really hard and you're looking for, when I say that light, whether it's that love, that's something to inspire you, something that's going to teach you how to move on. And that's where the E comes in, where we're all looking to evolve. So they're all tied in together. I want to bring that all together and make sure it's valuable time spent, So hopefully something in today's podcast touched you or was worthwhile to you. And, if there's ever any topics of interest, like I said, leave it in the comments, or you can always email loveinspireteachy@gmail.com. But look forward to seeing y'all again. And thank you for those that support. Thank you to those that watch the rerun. And we hope to see you again soon. Like I said, Tuesday's podcast is at 7 Central Time. So see you guys soon and have a great night.